Hey there, and welcome to the UkeStuff channel, and welcome to this full UkeGuide review of the Kala Learn to Play. This is their Color Chord Ukulele. It's a plastic soprano ukulele. It's the same as their Waterman in that matte black finish. So we're going to talk about this instrument in three different ways today. First of all, we'll talk about subjective issues. Then we'll talk about the objective specifications of the instrument. And then finally, we'll come back to a subjective conclusion, and then of course a UkeGuide rating for the instrument. Now this one I bought as a part of an Amazon return. It was still in mint condition in the box. It was just returned at a great savings over the original price. So let's begin with the data of this instrument. First of all, it is a $40 instrument in the United States, just about everywhere. $39.99 is where you can find it, and you generally don't find it any less expensive, and it's no better deal than the Waterman that are out there right now of the same sort of variety for this matte black finish. Now with that, you get a set of Aquila Super Nile gut strings. You get the markers on the front that collaborate with Kala's webpage. They have a bunch of videos that match that, as well as their app on Android and iOS. So you can use those at least for the first few chords. Gives you C, G, theoretically G7, F, and A minor to work with. And quite honestly, it's four chords in the truth, right? Of all those songs you can play with pop music. In addition to the app and the instrument and the strings you get with it, you also get a drawstring bag, and the drawstring bags have been a part of the sort of Waterman family since it came out in 2015. We'll talk a little bit more about the history of the instrument at the summary at the end of this video. So ultimately, you're getting a pretty decent value for your money here with a ukulele from a well-known ukulele company with quality strings, a waterproof instrument, and a drawstring bag. What more could you want? So it's a pretty good value. Now there are some more things that you could want, and let's just talk about it. Overall, it's pretty well made, but a couple of things. Some of the tuners feel a little wonky as you turn them. These fret markers, the actual silver part, and the side markers, and even the front position markers are known to wear off on these with use, sometimes with a very little amount of use, which then you find yourself, according to other owners, drawing them in with a Sharpie or whatever. Now, in talking about looking at the build quality of an ukulele, I always like to look on the inside, although there's probably not much to see here. Let's take a look. Okay, let's take a look at what's happening inside this ukulele. Okay, there you can see the bridge plate, and you can see the bracing on the inside. You can see the glare from the light. So you can see the vertical braces. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 vertical braces. Then we've got some horizontal braces. There's the first one. Of course, one underneath the bridge down there. So there's lots of support in there keeping this one strong. And then there's really nothing to see on the bottom other than the sticker itself. All right, let's take a look at the upper bout of the ukulele. All right, here we go. Okay, looking at the top, you can see some molding points there that hold the top and the sides, where they are glued, I'm sure. There is no traditional neck block or tail block, incidentally, on the ukulele. Just all comes together through there. And then of course you have your rather large lip on the top that I can't pull enough out of to take a look at. So again, not a lot to see on a plastic ukulele. So that would be our Learn to Play. Now in terms of appearance, I like the flat black. I really do. Generally I would just buy a flat black Waterman or a clear one. Both of those appeal to me. But this one again has the special little arrows that coincide with the Kala artist that also is around this product, which is Emily Arrow, who is a songwriter and a musician and a former teacher, now living, I believe, in Portland, who made a series of educational videos connected with that Emily Arrow. So if you notice the arrows and so forth, and the arrows up there, that's the connection there with it, learning how to play with Emily Arrow, and then also with the Cala app. And if you don't like those colors, I don't think you can take them off. So then just buy the black Waterman instead of this version. You get everything else, and all those resources still work. You just don't have the arrows to put your finger on. And quite honestly, once you learn those first 4 chords, you don't really need the arrows anymore. So that said, it's pretty plain. It does have a little raised sound hole up there on the front. It is a slotted bridge with a non-adjustable saddle. We'll come back to that, and a 0 fret. And then the other thing that's kind of cool is on the back, they do put Cala now, stamp it on the back of these, which is kind of fun to see. It doesn't interfere with your playing at all. It's in a perfect spot for that, yet to be branded for the instrument. So I like its appearance, but it's pretty plain. In terms of availability, the question is how many do you want and how soon do you want to get them? Your local music store probably has these. Amazon for sure has these. They're all over the internet, eBay, you name it. You can get as many of these as you want, as quickly as you want, without any problems whatsoever. Now, in terms of playability, 2 different things happening here. It's a normal C-shaped neck that you'd find on any Cala ukulele, so that's kind of nice. It's a familiar feel. So if you like a Cala soprano, like the KA15, for example, the KA15S, then this neck will feel right at home to you. The nut is pretty much right at 35 millimeter. The spacing is pretty generous for a 35 millimeter instrument with a nut of 35 millimeters at just over 9 millimeters. So it's pretty comfortable to play as a soprano goes, and the scale length is a little bit longer than your typical soprano. Where the negative pieces come in for me, first of all, is that I really do think that since they have this really nice flat profile here, they could have brought that flat profile a little bit further down the neck. They weren't locked into making it like the other Cala necks, so why do that? And then the other issue is the action is quite high at the 1st fret and decently high at the 12th, making it hard to play and out of tune as you go up the neck. So it's a mixed thing where part of it makes it good to play, but the action does not. So I'm going to put it right in the middle of the rating as that goes. Now, in terms of sound quality, I'm not a big fan of it. I don't mind plastic ukuleles. I've got a bunch of them, and then somewhere down the road we'll probably do a shootout with a bunch of plastic ukuleles. It's not awful. It's not offending at all, but it's very plasticky in a sort of boxy way. The volume is generally pretty good. You can really hit it and get some volume out of there. As for sustain, it's kind of what you would expect for a plastic instrument. It does have some sustain, but it's definitely not carrying a lot of character in that sustain. The tone overall is pretty dark. It lacks sparkle. Now, if you don't like ukuleles with a lot of high end, this might be an ukulele for you. Although, I think, again, with the action that you cannot adjust, that's a problem. Now, one of the things I like to do with ukuleles is to let you see a visual representation of what I'm hearing as well. So what I use is the app Tonal Energy Tuner, and it shows me the Harmonic Energy series for an instrument. So as I play the C chord with the ukulele, where you're only pressing down a finger on one string, the other strings are open, you get a chance to hear what's happening with the harmonics on the ukulele. So let's check it out. We'll play it a few times and let you hear what's going on. I'm having to hit the strings pretty hard. So ultimately, what I'm seeing and hearing is that you don't light up the full spectrum of sound as the instrument plays. There's a lot of overtones that aren't being played with the construction and the materials. And then when you do have the sustain, it's on the low end and it dips very quickly. So let's move on to the objective data on the instrument, the specifications. It is a soprano ukulele that measures at a scale length of 13.75 inches from the 0 fret to the sort of injected saddle, which is not adjustable. There are 12 frets and 12 frets to the body. There are side position markers on both sides of the instrument, so you could easily restring it for a left-handed player. It is a double bout ukulele with an ABS soundboard, body, you have an ABS bridge, fretboard, you name it. The only things that aren't are the strings and the tuners. Otherwise, it's all ABS. The bridge is a slotted bridge, making it pretty easy to change strings. And it does not have a radius fretboard. It is perfectly flat. The nut and saddle, again, it's a situation where you have the nut and then a 0 fret that is supposed to help with intonation. Those are made of ABS plastic, as is the saddle that is just embedded there. Now, the real big issue for me is that you can't adjust that saddle, and you really can't adjust the 0 fret. You read some people online that do, but there's not much there to adjust to get it much lower, and I think you'll still be out of what most people would consider a good playing tolerance. The finish is a matte finish, which I really like, that matte black. The overall length is 21 inches exactly, and it weighs 14.2 ounces and is balanced pretty well. The tuners are open geared, and as I mentioned earlier in the video, there's a couple that don't turn so smoothly. I'll probably be using some household oil and trying to work those out over time. The action at the first fret is over actually 1 millimeter. I wrote 1 millimeter on the fact sheet, but it's a little higher than that. And we're looking at 3.5 millimeters and increasing at the 12th fret. The nut width is 34.97 millimeters, which is about as close to 35 millimeters as you can get. And the spacing between frets at the first fret, and that's where I always check it, is 9.03 millimeters between each set of strings, making it 29.24 millimeters from G to A, which is pretty roomy on a 35 millimeter nut. The depth at the third fret is 21.06 millimeters from the top of the strings to the bottom of the neck, just to give you an idea of the chunkiness of it. And it is a C-shaped neck overall. With that, let's move to the summary of the instrument. And I'm going to talk a little bit at length here about the history of the instrument. This body style was introduced in 2015 out of ABS, actually clear and colors and sort of things back in 2015. There are videos of Mike Upton, who's the president of Cala, introducing them on the web. And it was a tribute to this instrument. This is the Macaferry, which this one, literally in the boxes of the Waterman, say that it is a tribute to. So with that, Cala changed the materials. They changed some things with the bracing and the weight, and they ended up making a less nice copy. There's a part of me that wonders why they wouldn't have attempted to make this again, because this worked pretty well. Maybe if you have to use some other new materials, maybe you do that, but instead they changed it a bit and made it a tribute rather than sort of a replica. But there's a difference here, and let me let you hear this. I'm going to put down the color chord, learn to play one. Here's the C chord on the Macaferry. Lots of sustain, still a plastic sound. But it has a whole different character than the Waterman Learn to Play, you name it. This one just gets lost and is tubby in its sound. So I don't know why they did that. Now, Cala has since creating the Waterman, obviously changed color schemes. For a couple years, I think 3 years, they changed this to the Ukedelic series. The Ukedelic series used to be like the Dolphins, which have a wooden soundboard and plastic back and sides. But the Ukedelics used to be just like that, but then they changed it to just being these with a print on the front. And I think they've changed that back in 2020, if I remember my news from NAMM last year or earlier this year. And then they also use this for the Learn to Play ukulele, which I'm holding. So it's all Waterman one way or another. So there is a concert version of this too, and I will review that eventually as well. I do actually have one of those here from my school that I can use to show you what that's like, and then do a comparison between the soprano and the concert. That'll be fun. The Learn to Play model is matte black. It has the little chord guides if you're learning how to play. There are a number of music teachers that stick those on their ukuleles to help their kids learn how to play. It may or may not be the color sequence that you see here, because I know of no less than 4 different systems that teachers use with their stickers based upon sort of who their educational mentor is. So you might think, well, everybody's going to do red as C. Not true. Not true in every possible case. Now, there are a couple other things I want to say here. Again, having really missed the mark of what the Macaferry was and its popularity, it's still a nice option to go to the beach, but the issue with the string height and then the sharpness as you go up the neck is an issue. Now, you might say, well, a person playing at the beach is only going to play in the first 5 frets anyway. Well, you're still dealing with really kind of high action at the first fret. Well, my question to you is, why does it not have to be that great? When you can make it better, why not make it better? So that action at the first fret being so high, it may not seem like a big issue, but why make it worse to play than it needs to be? And this also is a message that goes to schools. Now, for full disclosure, Cala once donated a whole set of Watermans to the school I was working at to use. And those actually ukuleles are now at another elementary school. We were able to split the wealth recently, but those ukuleles are still in use. I'm very grateful for those ukuleles, but I know a lot of music teachers that sort of declare that this is the ukulele to get, and I would argue with that. Now, Cala was kind enough to send us a set of ukuleles. However, if you're buying these and you can't adjust the action at the nut, you can't adjust the action at the settle, and you know it's high, and you know that ultimately the playing experience is going to be sharp up the fretboard, I don't know why you would demand that that's a great instrument. And there are people that say theirs are fine, and almost every one of these that I measure, the action is high. So my question to Cala would be, why not tweak the mold or the design or whatever needs to happen here for that to happen? I mean, does the entire neck part of the mold have to be moved up to make sure that that stays lower so you have better playing? I don't know, because I'm not a CAD CAM engineer that studies the acoustics of sound, but I can tell you when action is higher than it ought to be. And therefore, as a result, I don't recommend these for schools. If Cala can straighten that out, that's fine. But it sure seems like the problems still seem to be there. And again, it's over and over and over again that I see and that I hear from other people. And what I tend to believe is that people that say theirs are fine are just accepting something that they don't need to. It's 2020. There are a lot of different plastic ukuleles out there, if you're committed to plastic, that do a better job with the action. Why not look at one of those? There are people out there who will say, well, it's the price point along with the plastic ukulele, but there are better places to go unless Cala addresses that. So it's really a plea to Cala to make this right, because they could make this thing perfect, have it made perfect, and it wouldn't be a question ever. Now, are there still going to be a situation where somebody leaves it in a car potentially and it melts or something? Sure. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about out of the box, playing exactly right the way that it should for any player, not having to make exceptions of, oh, it's just something for the beach. Now, for the record, I've even listened to the Ukulele Underground podcast, and I've heard Aldrine talk about how he picked up one of these from one of his nephews or nieces and thought it wasn't too bad. That's great too, but with Aldrine, I would give him some of the other options that exist out there for this instrument and say, what do you think now? And I'm sure he'd say, yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. With all that in mind, I rate every ukulele on the channel to my own scale of 5 ukuleles. So you can get 0 to 5 ukuleles. Because of the issue that the nut, action at the nut, action at the saddle is not adjustable, I have to give this a 2 out of 5. Now, that may make you unhappy, but I think it's a fair score when you can't make this a better playing instrument than it is. And it's really up to Kala to fix that, and they can. So thank you for watching the video. I hope you're having a great day, and I will be back soon with some more Uke stuff for you.